Hello audience and welcome back. In this video we're going to go over the axle housings and set up the thrust washers. So these are the housings that came off the car. Now I said in a previous video this was probably built somewhere around 1915. Well, this is where I got the idea from, was these housings, because these are actually 1 year only. They were built in 1915. They have the late center section but still have the early backing plates. And they're kind of rare and uncommon. Functionally, that doesn't really matter. I don't plan on piecing together a 15 Model T anytime soon, but just the same, because they're somewhat uncommon, I was going to put them aside for now and use a different pair of housings, but I looked around at the ones I have, and these are actually the best ones. The rest of them have various flaws in them. Another thing is, somebody's already gone through the trouble to degrease these, sandblast them, and get them painted. Yeah, they painted them the wrong color, but still, it's got a decent quality paint job on it, pretty easy to paint over. So, point being, a small fortune and quite a bit of effort has already gone into these, so we're going to use them. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over these, show you what condition they're in, and I'll mention a few production changes and a few interchangeability problems you might run into. So a few problems these typically have is the hole for the spring perch sometimes is worn out. This one's still pretty tight, so that's good. Now these wear marks down here caused by worn out shackles and the spring hitting it, that's pretty common. They almost always have that. Not really a problem though. If it bothers you, you can fill over it before painting it, but I think I'm going to leave it. The threaded holes for the brake shoes, they're also in good shape. They're not stripped out. I already installed new actuators on them, so that's good. Don't have to do anything to that. Around the outside of it, they're still pretty good. On the underside, these can usually get beat up or worn out from, I don't know, driving without wheels on them or stuff like that, but these are really good. Sometimes they can also get cracks down here inside here, but I don't see any on either of these. So yeah, they don't really need anything. And now we'll go over the evolution of the rear axle housings. I'm mostly doing this just because I have several of these laying around, but also there's a few interchangeability problems to watch out for. So starting out, we have this one, the 1913-1914 series. What was used from 1912 and earlier, I don't really know, and I'm not going to pretend I do, so we're just going to skip those. And like I've said before, the big visual difference on these is the center section, particularly how the tube flares out against it. The backing plate, also, it looks like the later ones, but it has no reinforcing ribs around it, it's just smooth around the inside. And this one was introduced in 1915. And as you can see, the big difference is it's got the new design center section that more or less was used till the end of production. A few changes here and there, but pretty much the same thing. Still uses the old backing plate, however. That's smooth with no reinforcing ribs. Now, interesting thing about these is they're only used for about 6 or 7 months of 1915. These are probably actually more rare than the 13-14 housings. Although people don't seem to be hoarding these and trying to get rich off of them like they are the earlier ones. But they are somewhat of a novelty to have. This one was introduced in late 1915, beginning of 1916, whatever you want to call it. And it's identical to the other one, except it's got the new backing plate with the reinforcing ribs. Now, a few other things I'll point out. This one, like all the other ones before it, the filler plug is exactly parallel to this mounting bolt, and where the pinion bearing attaches to, there's this recess around here to go with that housing. Now, this one was introduced in 1919, 1920, somewhere in there, and used through 1925. There's quite a few little differences, although from the outside it looks just about identical. On the center section, the filler plug has been moved, so it's now between these two bolts, and when installed in the car, it's actually slightly lower than the previous design. Why they did that, I'm not entirely sure. Another somewhat interesting thing about that is these castings are the same left and right, so where the filler plug is, on the opposite side there's a boss where it would be, and on the earlier ones they're parallel with each other, but on the later ones, since it's slightly lower, on the other side it's slightly higher, so they're staggered. Functionally that doesn't really mean anything, but I thought it was interesting. Also, around this time they also changed the pinion bearing housing, and it doesn't have that step around here anymore. So here's the early design with the step around it, and the pinion bearing that goes with it has this ridge around it, and they go together like so. The later design doesn't have that step, and the later pinion bearing, which as you can see, you can tell it's a later one because the bolts are exposed, goes on like so. Now the interesting thing is, the later one will also interchange with the early housing. The backing plate, pretty much the same as the earlier ones. Another little difference is this part here where the wheel bearing seal goes on is actually a slightly larger diameter than the earlier one and requires a different seal. It's another one of those little differences that can really confuse you if you don't know better. And that's about it. So this is the early one, and the diameter is about 2 3/8 inches. On the later one, it is about 2 7/16. Another little thing I almost forgot is, from this point on, there was a gasket used between the two housings, and these apparently were machined for that. I've read that in several places. I'm not entirely sure what that means, because this surface looks identical to the earlier ones. The only thing I can think of is maybe this is a few thousandths further down to compensate for the thickness of the gasket, but whatever the case may be, whether or not you're going to use a gasket, you need to decide that about now, because we need to compensate for that when setting the thrust. The earlier housings didn't use them, so I'm going to completely ignore it. The only other design was the 2627, which I don't have, but they're pretty obvious. They're pretty much the same as this, only they have a much bigger backing plate on them. And there's one more version I would like to point out, which I like to call the Joker in the deck, because there's not a lot of information on these. I didn't find anything in the encyclopedia or the judging standards about these, but they do exist, and if you get stuck with one and you don't know better, they can give you a real headache. This is off a Southern Wide Track Model T. If you've never heard of those before, the regular Model T had the standard wheel track every other car at the time had, which was 56.5 inches. Now, there's a very interesting story and a pretty good history lesson on why it's that way and why there was a standard, but this isn't really the time or place for that. What's important is the southern states had their own standard wheel track, which was 60 inches. So the Model Ts they built there had a 60-inch wheel track. This one from end to end is about 28 inches long, whereas a regular one's about 26 inches. They also made longer axle shafts, presumably a longer front axle, longer tie rod, and they had slightly wider fenders. I don't know a lot about the southern cars, or how long they were built or what, other than they do exist. And there's a surprising amount of them in California, oddly enough. So you do run into this stuff once in a while. And if you're selecting a pair of housings to use and you get them sandblasted, you get them painted or powder coated, and then you find out they're the wrong ones, that can be a real problem. So that is one thing to watch out for. And now we'll work on the thrust washers. Now, this thing, it gets a set of washers on each side that go between it and the axle housings, which consists of 2 steel washers. Each one has dowels holding them in place so they don't turn, and a cast Babbitt washer that floats in between them, and that's the wear surface. Yes, it does not use roller thrust bearings like a modern differential. Now, one thing to keep in mind about these is the Model T is typically looked at as a product of the 20s, which is understandable. The vast majority of them were built then. But They were first introduced in 1909. They were designed around 1908, 1907, based on designs at the time, so the engineering on this is very much from the Edwardian era. So a lot of just really strange, unconventional stuff by today's standards, and this is part of it. It's a really strange system, but it actually does work. If you set everything up, get the clearances where they should be and all that, it'll work just fine. You'll never have to touch it again. So we're just going to stick with it. Now, the original Babbitt washers, they probably worked okay when they were new, but one complaint I've heard about them is they're brittle and they can shatter without notice. And usually what happens is the one on the left side shatters and just disintegrates. Then the whole carrier and the ring gear move over to the left side. Pinion gear doesn't contact it anymore, and you have no control of the rear wheels. So what's available now is you can get a brand new bronze thrust washer to replace it. Now these work pretty good. I've never heard anything bad about them. They don't shatter or anything. They probably last longer than the original Babbitt ones. But point being, they're good enough, so we're going to use them. Now the thickness these washers need to be varies depending on how worn out the housings are, how mismatched it is. Sometimes you need to move it to one side or the other to adjust the ring gear backlash. So really, you got to set these up by trial and error. And if one side is too tight, you take the bronze washer and sand it down. If it's too loose, you can add shims to it. This one is like 15 thousandths, I think. Those are available new, or you can make your own. This one had a couple of homemade ones in it already. So you just got to do whatever you can to make it work. Also, we have to replace a few of the alignment dowels on the housings. So I bought some new ones. Now, from the description, it looked like these were sold individually, so I bought 4 of them. They actually come in packs of 6, so I ended up buying 4 packs of 6. So now I have a lifetime supply of them. On the right side housing, the dowels are pretty beat up, but they're still in place. I think I'm going to replace them anyway. Now the bearing sleeve, it didn't want to come out. I tried it and it stuck in really good, and I figured I'm just going to reuse it anyway, so I decided to leave them in. The left side housing is a little worse. First of all, we can see this groove around here where the ring gear was hitting it, so this thing probably blew up once already. The alignment dowels are gone. They're still here, they've been flattened out. Looks like someone tried drilling this one out, but it's still there. So the washers were turning on this. It might have wore it down some, I don't know. But we're going to have to replace them anyway. Well, I'll start with this one because somebody already started drilling it out. Okay, I tried installing these with an interference fit, and these dowels are actually pretty soft. You hit the top of them with a hammer and they just distort like crazy. So that's not going to work. So the next idea I had was to drill it oversize and just drop them in place and close it up around it with a hammer and a punch. This is a little trick I just thought of. Once you have one pin installed, you can use an old thrust washer as a template to show you exactly where to drill for the other one. when assembling these things, ideally you want one housing to be able to stand like this, preferably a ways off the ground, and just load everything on it like so. And there is a handy dandy jig that will hold these in place and attach to your workbench. I don't have one, and I don't have a workbench sturdy enough to hold one, so I made this. A couple of extra housings, some scrap lumber, a few clamps. It costs nothing, looks dangerous, and is, but I think it'll get the job done. Ideally, they want about 5 thousandths clearance side to side. I don't know what we're going to end up with, but we got to start somewhere. Now, if you're wondering, how do we keep the washer from falling out when we turn this the other way around? Well, one way is you can hit the dowels with a punch and give it an interference fit. Alright, I have this thing assembled. I have a dial indicator on the top, so I'm going to pry the part where the ring gear attaches and move this up and down and see how much clearance we have. Now, one thing I'll point out is I put all 7 bolts on this to hold it together. If you don't have every bolt in it, it can warp and give you a false reading. Yeah, they really are that flimsy, but somehow it works. So anyway, so it looks like about 9, maybe 10 thousandths, which is pretty good to start with. Yeah, it's not right on target, but it's really close. We don't have to spend days grinding the washers down or anything like that, so I'm really happy about that. That's going to save me a lot of work. The only thing we need to do is, I don't know, make a 5 thousandths shim and put it under one of the washers, and then it'll be right on target. So, I'm very happy about that. Next thing to do is start on the drive shaft part of it. The pinion bearing, the universal joint, and all that stuff, and that'll probably be the next video. I already started on all that, but I kind of made a mistake and had to order more parts, and I'm waiting for that right now. And you'll find out all about that in the next video. In fact, if you know a few things about Model Ts, you can probably figure out what I did wrong just by looking at this. Anyway, that's it for now, so thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Now, I've never seen it before or tried it, but I've heard that if you drop one of these on the ground, they'll shatter. Didn't even hurt them. What a bunch of nonsense. If I'd have known that earlier, I would have just reused these.